I was only 19 when I took my final vows. I remember the day clearly. The chapel was cold, the candles flickering like they were nervous for me. I wore white and smiled like I was walking into something sacred, and I was, or at least, that's what I believed back then. I had given up everything, my family, my friends, even my name. Inside the convent, I was no longer myself. I became Sister Maria. I prayed before the sun rose, and I slept in silence. My hands were always busy sewing, cleaning, holding a rosary. My voice was quiet, my thoughts even quieter. That was life behind the walls. Obedience was holiness, doubt was temptation, and love, real, human love, was the greatest sin of all. So when it happened, I wasn't ready. Not for the feelings, not for the consequences, and definitely not for what they were going to do to me once they found out. His name was Father Elias. He wasn't like the others. While most of the priests avoided us keeping a distance that was cold and formal, he'd notice us, he'd noticed me. He spoke gently, asked questions no one ever did, and looked at me like I wasn't invisible behind the habit. At first, I thought it was kindness, a rare light in a place where silence swallowed everything. But that kindness grew, slowly, carefully, until one day, it wasn't kindness anymore, it was attention. He would linger after confession, walk with me in the gardens, ask about my childhood, my fears, my dreams, and I told him everything, because when you live in silence long enough, the first voice that truly listens feels like salvation. I didn't know I was falling. I didn't want to fall. But love isn't something you can confess away. And by the time I realized what was happening, it was already too late. I had broken a vow, not just to God, but to the only version of myself I had left. The nausea started one morning during prayer. I thought it was the cold, or maybe the fast. But then it kept happening. Every day, my body felt heavier, slower. Something inside me was different. At first, I refused to believe it. I told myself it was stress, spiritual weakness, punishment, but deep down, I already knew. Alone, in the corner of the infirmary, I took the test, one I had stolen and hidden under my robes. I didn't pray before reading the result. I couldn't, because the moment I saw the 2 lines, I forgot how to speak to God. I sat there, shaking, my heart thudding so loud it drowned out every thought. I was a nun. I was supposed to be pure, holy. But now, I was carrying a child, and worse, a child that could never be acknowledged. I remember whispering, "I'm sorry," over and over again, not because I regretted the baby, but because I knew what the church would do to me if they found out. I waited 3 days before telling him. 3 nights of sleepless prayers, pacing in silence, holding my belly as if that would keep the truth hidden. When I finally told Father Elias, I thought he would hold me. I thought he would say, "We'll figure this out." But instead, he went silent. He stared at me like I was someone else, like he had never seen me before. Then, he stood up, walked to the window, and said, "This can never come to light." Just like that, no warmth, no comfort, only fear. His fear, not for me, but for himself. "You know what they'll do," he said. "You have to stay quiet. No one can find out." That was the moment I realized I was alone. He stopped visiting me after that, stopped speaking to me, and I stopped being a person in that place. I became a problem, a threat, a stain to be scrubbed away. The child growing inside me was no longer a miracle, it was a secret, one I would be forced to carry in silence, until they decided what to do with me. I don't know who told them. Maybe someone saw my trembling hands. Maybe someone heard me vomiting at dawn. Or maybe someone was watching me all along. One morning, after breakfast, I was told to follow Mother Superior. No reason, no explanation, just an order. She led me to a small room at the end of the east wing, a room I had never entered before. It was cold, windowless, with only a wooden chair and a crucifix on the wall. There, 3 people were waiting. A priest I didn't know, a woman in gray, and a man with a clipboard. They didn't ask me how I felt. They didn't pray with me. They asked one question: "How far along are you?" I didn't answer. I couldn't, but the silence was enough. "You will not speak of this again," the woman said. "Do you understand?" They called it a violation, a disgrace. They told me I had dishonored God. They stripped me of my privileges, took away my duties. For days, I was locked in my cell. No sunlight, no contact, just me, and the quiet sobs of something growing inside me, while the church decided what to erase next. They moved me to a hidden house outside the convent walls. No one explained where we were. They said it was for discretion. The room was bare, one bed, one cross, and two locked doors. I wasn't allowed to leave. A woman in uniform brought food twice a day, but never looked me in the eyes. Months passed like fog. I watched my belly grow and felt the baby kick, alone. No priest came to pray with me. No sister came to comfort me. It was as if I no longer existed, just a body waiting to deliver a scandal they didn't want. The day came without warning. I woke up in pain, screaming for help. They rushed in, two strangers in white, and told me to be quiet. There was no doctor, no priest, just them. I gave birth in silence, biting down on a cloth so the neighbors wouldn't hear. When the baby cried, I felt something inside me break. I begged to hold him just once, but they took him, wrapped him in a blanket, and walked away. No name, no goodbye, just a door closing behind them. I never saw my son again. The next morning, a nun came in with folded clothes. She said nothing, just handed me the habit and said, "It's time to go home." But nothing about that place was home anymore. When they brought me back to the convent, everything had changed. The other sisters wouldn't look me in the eye. My name was never spoken. I was no longer invited to morning prayer. I was no longer assigned duties. I wasn't a nun anymore. I was a shadow. Something they tolerated until they decided what to do with me next. I spent my days alone, walking the garden paths in silence, feeling the echo of a child I would never hold. And every night, I asked God the same question: why did you let them take him? The silence never answered. One evening, an older sister, Sister Agnes, slipped me a folded paper during dinner. Inside was a bus schedule, and a note: go before they make you disappear too. I don't know how she knew, or why she helped me. Maybe she had lost something too. That night, I didn't sleep. I packed a small bag, hid it under my robes, and waited for the bell tower to ring 3 times, the sign that the night watch was changing. And when it did, I left through the chapel door, barefoot, shaking, and free for the first time in years. The world outside felt louder than I remembered. The lights, the faces, the voices, everything was too fast, too unfamiliar. I hadn't held money in over a decade. I didn't even know how to use a phone. For the first few days, I slept at a shelter. I told them I was coming from a religious retreat, but they looked at me like they already knew I was running from something deeper. I found work cleaning homes, then later as a caregiver for the elderly. Simple, quiet jobs, the only kind that felt safe. But every time I saw a child, especially a boy with soft dark eyes, I had to turn away. I tried to ask about records, orphanages, adoptions, but no one could help. The church had made sure of that. They erased every trace. Some nights, I would lie awake and imagine his name, his voice, what he might look like. Was he safe? Was he loved? Did he even know I existed? And then I would cry, not for myself, but for the version of him that I never got to meet. The one I still pray for every single night. I'm not a nun anymore. I no longer wear the habit, or walk in silence, or recite prayers I don't believe in, but I still believe in God. I believe in grace. I believe in forgiveness. What I no longer believe in: the silence. The church told me to forget, to erase, to pretend it never happened. But the truth doesn't disappear just because it's inconvenient. My story may sound like a tragedy, and in many ways it is, but it's also a testimony of strength, of survival, of what it means to hold on to your humanity, even when the people who speak for God try to take it from you. If you've ever been silenced, shamed, or made to feel like your voice doesn't matter, I'm here to tell you, it does. It always did. And if telling this story brings even one person out of the dark, then breaking the silence was worth it. For me, for him, for all of us they tried to make disappear.